heal ourselves, heal the earth, and take
radical visioning, which is seeing the future, a better future after we get through this difficult time. What does the world look like? And ask yourself, how did we get there? So it's kind of reverse engineering a utopian future in the future. So just think in terms of 25 years from now, much, much, much better society. And then ask yourself, how did we get there? That's what's called radical visioning. And we'll work on that together. And then 150 to 155 next steps. And then we'll go out with some music celebration and wishes of solidarity. And then bookmark meeting again on the 18th of January. 2 days before the inaugural. We'll come back here the Saturday before, same time, 12 to 2 Eastern time, and we'll be discussing where we are at that moment in terms of local, state, and national actions. Both the resistance and the revolution need to be working on parallel tracks. The resistance and the revolution on parallel tracks. That was the appropriateness of the music at the very top, calling for a new world order, calling for a people's revolution, calling for us, doing the work that's necessary to create a better world. That's really the direction that we're headed, and that's the work that we're committed to doing here. So thanks everybody again for assembling and to be participating in this work. Let me just say a few words about self-care and other care. Sometimes it goes without saying, but frankly, I say it if only to say it to myself, that taking care of ourselves at this very stressful time is very important in our work. Just for me, this is what I do, and I've been doing this now for 2 years. As I commit myself to walking 10,000 steps a day. That's 4.2 miles, and I've also taken very fondly recently to deep tissue massage. I've found just a profound masseuse who is just incredible, and just stretching, trying to get rest, staying connected with family and friends, and self-care and other care, obviously taking care of those around us. And the focus of today's meeting is in particular to embrace and to be in solidarity with those more vulnerable communities. We're going to be hearing from a variety of folks. They'll be introducing themselves. I won't do that right now. I'll have folks come up and introduce themselves as they make their presentations and their statements. And then I guess the last thing I want to share here is this is a very learned crowd. This is a very profoundly political and politically knowledgeable gathering of folks. So I don't have to go over what Project 2025 is and what it means. For people who still doubt that in the world beyond us, let's be clear that Trump has just appointed Russell Vought to be the head of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, and that's precisely the place where they're planning to execute all these elements that roll out of Project 2025, including destroying the civil service as quickly as possible and putting loyalists throughout the civil service, and then also creating a national a database tracking women of birthing age, those people who are in that period of their lives. There's going to be a national repository and a national abortion ban, almost certainly through the existing Comstock Act of 1873. The list goes on and on and on. You all know a lot of this stuff. We're going to be learning a lot more about it, but this is what I call fire hose fascism. What's going to be coming at us is a little bit along the lines of blitzkrieg, which is lightning. It's going to be coming at us very quickly once Trump is sworn into office. He probably has made 25 commitments to get done on day one, the day that he says he wants to be dictator. And so we have to prepare ourselves for the resistance, for the solidarity, and also continue planning for the revolution. It's important, at least for my own mental health, and I think others, to be very strategic in how we do this work. And so the last portion of the presentation today is going to be involved in doing what's called radical visioning. And radical visioning, again, as I mentioned at the top, is that way of seeing the future and then understanding how it is that we got through this time period, as well as the subsequent time periods, in order to get to that much, much better society, we'll say 25 years down the line. And I think that so much of the work that we do is built on that that believing in each other and believing in ourselves and joining arms and holding each other both physically as well as virtually as we get through this difficult time. So with that said, let's pivot over to Alex. Alex is going to be making the first opening statement, and then we'll go through the rest of the folks. I'll call on you after you're done. So Alex, just very quick intro, share what's on your mind, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Chuck. Hello, Alex Deitrich Cortez, she, her. I am in central Pennsylvania, been working in civil service for a long time now. Here we are. I'm sure that we've all been asking ourselves some important and difficult questions right now, right? Really confronting the unknown right now. Some of these questions have been despairing. I'm sure some of them have been constructive. And both of these types of questions are completely okay right now. How are we here again? Haven't we learned our lesson from the last time? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my loved ones? Am I going to get hurt, or the people that I love going to get hurt? How and why would my neighbors not think of us? Why would they want us to suffer? Do they even care to think about that? Why do they vote against their own interests? And can this really happen here? It's, I think, a common refrain, oh, that can't happen here, but it has. Maybe you're thinking a little bit more proactively or constructively. How can I support my family? How do I keep myself safe? What are we supposed to do now to fight back? What are we missing right now? Why did this happen? How can we reverse some of the damage that's going to happen? How can I support the most vulnerable in my community? If I don't even have community, how can I start one? How can we really build power to actually resist? I think every one of these questions and more, surely more, is completely valid right now. If you have a conscience, you've been weighed down and probably feeling some pain. Today, we've gathered to start to answer some of those questions and probably some more. We'll probably think of new questions to walk away with and chew on. We're looking at a very difficult 4 years and possibly more to come after. We're looking at some serious damage being made to people, society, and important institutions in our country. The risks are real. Your fears are warranted and completely valid. Odds are, if you're anxious and despairing right now, it's not irrational. So today we also gather to acknowledge and honor and process the way we feel, to validate each other in our grief. Grieving right now is a sign that you are oriented in your values. You are on the right side. We also hope to gather today to learn from one another, and to think of ways that we can support each other to build real power, make connections, and start the resistance. We're going to collaborate on building radical hope, finding our strengths, and thinking of real, practical ideas on how we can employ them. Some of us have already gotten a start on this work, and thank you for your fortitude and proactivity. If you've been in your community knocking on doors, starting to get to know your neighbors a bit more, getting more involved in whatever activist work you do, that's fantastic. But if you've been processing and grieving and you haven't started that work, whatever that's going to look like for you, let's start that today. I hope after this summit, you'll walk away feeling more connected and motivated and filled with the hope that you've probably been craving to feel, and the hope that we're going to need to get through the next 4 years and more. So let's get started.
Beautiful, Alex. Way to kick it off. Really appreciate that. And for those who don't know, Alex and I go back to the Bernie days. We met in 2016 when I was a delegate, and we started the Pennsylvania Our Revolution together with her dad and a number of other folks. So thank you, Alex, for being a great organizing partner. And yeah, let's roll up our sleeves. Next up is Simon Hutton from Corvallis, Oregon. Simon.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, I'm Simon Hutton. I've gotten involved in work to try to win universal healthcare for all in Oregon and with Chuck at One Pair States. And I've gotten also more involved with sort of organizing, political organizing in Oregon. In the wake of the election, my thoughts really turned towards combating cynicism. And by that, I mean, the outcome of the election was really, really bad. Obviously, and I echo, what Alex said, if we're grieving, processing, trying to reckon with the way things are. That's totally understandable. When I think about cynicism, what I think about is sort of turning inwards, right? Turning inwards against everything coming at us. And how we can maybe deal with that and turn what's happened in the election to productive action. Because in the election I saw many people that voted were looking desperately for change wherever it was. And unfortunately, what they perceived as the change being offered was coming from a very, very bad place. But that was what they were desperate for. They were desperate for change. And in the wake of that election, it's just like Chuck said, it's already been a barrage. It's going to turn up even more after the inauguration. It's just a barrage trying to hammer people down and hammer them down and hammer them down and hammer them down, hammer all of us down, making it difficult to process and take action. And we see some people who are trying to defend the status quo that people wanted the change from, saying, no, the solution we have to surrender on all these points. We have to surrender on the issue of defending immigrants. We have to surrender on the issue of supporting trans people, right? That's their response. But that's not going to make anything better. And we have to not fall back, but move forward with a strong, positive vision. I think of organizations that may be tempted in this moment to fall back, play defense. They're concerned about their capacity, how much work they can do. And it's understandable. We do need to try to defend and support people, but we also need in this moment to have a positive vision, a strong positive vision, to find common cause, to find where our issues intersect and how we can support each other and build a united front that pushes for not just defending against this onslaught, but something better in, real populist progressive change. And it's not a contradiction that we can support social justice for all and also acknowledge the struggles people have, the cost of groceries, the day-to-day struggles they face. We can fight for both of these. We don't have to fall back on either of them. And so and I just, as a last comment, I think about what Chuck said about self-care. It's also critical individually that we not turn inwards and fall into cynicism. I think, we have to live. We have to do what makes us happy. We have to engage in life because we do the things that we would love to do all the time if we can reach what Chuck described in the positive vision, in the radical visioning, a better world, a utopian world, whether that be, gardening or hiking, or for me, playing very difficult board games on Friday night with my friends. These things that make us happy, engage with them and move forward and unite and not fall to cynicism in the face of this barrage we're about to face. And hopefully we can make it through this.
Absolutely, Simon. Thank you so much. And I think you actually indirectly referenced this document that I think many of us have heard, and I've heard a number of people encouraging us to think about sharing it. The German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the socialists, but I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't stand up. And that poem, that reading, I think if somebody wants to drop that in the chat, that would be very helpful. Just a link to Martin Niemöller's comment about how we need to defend each other, support each other now, and not stand down, as Simon said. Next up is Daye Pope, extraordinary organizer in the trans community, joining us from Northeast Pennsylvania. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Daye. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for your grace with me not being on camera. in Northeast PA, we got about 12 inches of snow dumped on us, so we lost power. And if I suddenly drop off, that's what's happening. My name is Daye, she, her pronouns. I've been doing LGBTQ organizing for over a decade. And I'm completely devastated on a personal and just broader level by the election because of just how many people I already know and love who are struggling and who have been struggling and are already not really safe in this country and around the world, and how this election is just going to be a catastrophe for so many different groups that we care about. And it made me think of just a small sort of vignette was echoing through my mind when I was seeing the election results roll in, where it reminded me of last year. I was a part of a progressive coalition that was working on getting a true progressive elected to be mayor in Philadelphia, where I lived at the time. And it was an incredible group of people. It was so many different organizations that came together, Working Families Party, many different immigrants' rights group, racial justice group, LGBTQ rights groups, educational advocates, so many different aspects of our intersected communities and many different organizers. Everyone that I knew essentially was on the same side of trying to get this progressive elected, and many different national voices, the Bernies and the Elizabeth Warrens and everyone like that. And when it came time for the results to roll in, this progressive was third and did not become the mayor. Came in third in the election. And it really struck me then that I was like, oh wow, we really are a little bit in a bubble. Like, that is such a thing that's lobbed at certain people. That's, I think, is not always true and is often in bad faith. But it made me realize, oh, our progressive groups, it was like all the regular suspects, if you will. And yet we were all talking to each other and we didn't even get to second place. And it made me realize our movements are not reaching enough people. Like, there are people that show up to events like this. There are people that we probably see at all the same different organizing events and conferences, and that we knock doors with, that we do all of this different outreach with. And when I saw this election result, it just made me feel the same way with Trump being elected, with a trifecta, even narrowly. It just makes me feel like, wow, our movements, as many people as we are connecting with and touching, our movements are not reaching enough people. And there are just so many people that are being reached by misinformation and by outright lies and by propaganda, by podcasts and, some of these Joe Rogan type people. And so a main question that I have to just pose to everyone to keep thinking about over the course of the summit and as we begin to vision for the future is, what does it actually look like to get beyond the regular suspects? Like, how do we actually expand what we're doing from the amazing people that we love and that we work with and that we organize with to the types of people that are never getting touched by these messages somehow? Because there's so many people in this country, and I fear that we're not reaching them, but they are being reached by the just avalanche of false information and of targeted propaganda. And I think that figuring out how we get outside of our progressive world is going to be the way forward, because we can't do it alone, and we can't do it as a minority, even a spirited minority of the population. So looking forward to hearing all your thoughts and learning from everybody today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daye. That was wonderful. good, profound questions, important questions to ponder, especially as we move into the breakout rooms and then the visioning portion of the presentation today. Next up is Nox Shou. Nox is a former student of mine at University of the Arts, one of my most brilliant students, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Nox has to say. Thanks so much for being here, Nox.
Hi, I'm Nox Shou. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am affiliated with Justice for All Network, and I am from Philly. I do not have the inspirational words that my colleagues do. I have been afraid and trying to not think about things by and large. I don't know how to handle a lot of it, and I do my best to maintain normality in my life. The future is so uncertain, and I've been told by a lot of people that I should be scared and that bad things are going to come to the people that I care about, and it's 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 a pretty dark image, and I and everyone else I know is just worrying, and I'm trying not to worry because it's just gonna make things harder to get through. It's harder to get through the day. And I wish I had something inspirational to say. The best I can do is to be here, and I guess share my voice.
Thank you so much, Nox. Yeah, really profound. You know, this is another place where a lot of people are at this point, and so we feel you, and all empathy and solidarity. So thanks again for being here. Hopefully, you know, I think more ideas are going to come out as we go forward. I think this is we're meant to inspire each other, to lift each other. Next up is Pat Chadwick from Sacramento, a great contributor to the Justice for All network. And Pat's going to speak on behalf of the disability rights community. Pat, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia Chadwick. And I just want to say I appreciate your statement, Nox. It's very moving. And I just am concerned about, you know, people in the younger generation and my daughters and, you know, what they have to face. But most of my experience has been in working in the disability activist world. And I've been, since the election, been meeting with different groups of people with disabilities and listening to what their concerns are. And a lot of it revolves around healthcare and the, you know, the plans of the new administration to gut stuff like Medicaid or do block grants, which would make it just kind of forces people to it pits groups against each other who are trying to get decent healthcare. And you know, lack of support. The other concern is lack of support for measures like vaccines and masks, which is still an issue, you know, especially for people with long COVID or people with vulnerabilities that make them more susceptible to viruses and things like that. And people seem to not always be concerned about, you know, protecting those groups. And I think that's going to become more of an issue. But I do want to say that, you know, people with disabilities have had very successful protests and fights for getting their rights. And, you know, the last time Trump was in office, he tried to gut Medicaid, and people with disabilities fought against it and won. So, you know, we need to look at the expertise of people with disabilities and their previous fights and how they have experience in this, and so they should always, need to be included in whatever fights we're trying to win. And other issues that have been stated are there's requirements for accessibility, digital accessibility and building accessibility, which is sometimes a state issue, but sometimes is a federal issue. And those things could be, if they want to get rid of regulations, or the Department of Education, which supports kids with disabilities in schools. A lot of funding comes from the federal government, not just the state. And labor protections for people who work, particularly people with developmental disabilities who sometimes get paid very low wage. So, and then along with the general stigmatizing that this man has done against people with disabilities, as well as, making sort of legitimizing racism, sexism, anti-trans stuff, it kind of just sets up this atmosphere of making it okay to stigmatize people. So one of the other things that people with disabilities have been talking about is this kind of whitewashing of curriculum in schools. I think it's happened in Florida and Texas, where they try to make it sound like slavery was okay. So one of the things we are looking at doing is developing a curriculum around disability history, but including other civil rights history, and teaching it as an online class, so that people who aren't getting the correct education in schools can, anybody in the country could join the class. But it would be like a series of classes on this kind of history, and making sure that people know that history and the civil rights history, because I think a lot of, just encountering people right before and after the election, there was a lot of mostly younger people, I think, that I met that just didn't have the civic education, or they don't understand how the government works, and that, if the corporations are raising prices, that it's not something that the government can always control. So it's stuff like that. And then I met somebody who hadn't heard of Project 2025, and another person who just forgot to vote. So anyway, I think there's a lot of education that needs to go on, and but I just want to emphasize that people with disabilities should be included in the organizing, because they have done a great job in the past. Thank you.
Terrific, Pat. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more in the breakouts and in the reports. We need to hustle up a little bit. Let's see. Next up is Eberto, and then Vicki follows Eberto, and then we'll have some conversation here, and then do the breakouts shortly after 1 o'clock Eastern, and then just keep marching forward. Thank you so much. So right now we've got Eberto Willies from Houston, Texas, the producer of a brilliant podcast called Politics Done Right. And Eberto, when you're done, drop your link in the chat. Take care.
Thank you very much, Chuck. First of all, I want to thank you for doing this. This is, I think, extremely important what you're doing, and the long suffering that you put into healthcare and much more is exceptional. So thank you for doing this. On the night of the election, my 27-year-old niece, Natalia, she sent me a text, and her simple text was, "Tio, what are your predictions?" And my response to her was, "Does not look good realistically. This is not the country I thought it is." And I noticed I didn't say I thought it was. I said, this is not the country that I thought it is. My niece is half Mexican. She's half Black Latina. My sister, a doctor, pediatrician, and assistant dean at a medical school in California, sent me a text right after it was clear who was going to win. And she said, what a night. Clarity is liberating, though. I replied to her and I said, yep, it's the country. Read my next blog. She says, will do. We made history. A convicted felon given full control of the country. One of the things that I've been pondering with is how to express what we've just seen, what have just happened in the country. And one of the things that we first have to acknowledge is that the vast majority of people, the vast majority of Americans are good people, whether they be MAGA, whether they be progressives, whether it be conservatives or otherwise. It's all in narrative, and it's all in how we, in my opinion at least, how we've spoken to people. And my big problem with this election, and I'd love to hear people's input on this, is for some, when I hear that we live in a bubble, when that progressive candidate didn't win and came in third, it's not a bubble. If that progressive candidate reflected what most Americans want. Your progressive candidate reflected what most Americans want. So why is it that your progressive candidate didn't get elected? And again, narrative and honesty, in my opinion, again. The media during the election have been concentrating on Kamala losing the Black vote, Kamala losing Latino votes. And all along, as an engineer, I'm asking the same question. The vast majority of voters in this country, whether she loses 10, 20, 15%, 10, 20, 30% of Latino men, has a marginal effect on the election. But we allow that narrative to come out and says, why, she is losing these people. We have to be honest and say, the people that are not voting for folks like Camera, and as one of our speakers just said, in their best interest, are not these people. These are white people that are voting against their own interests. And we have to ask the question, what is the real reason? Those of us that are progressives, specifically white progressives, in my own opinion, and there is no what's the word? Have to ask that question and say, why is it that folks like me don't that has the same thought process that I have, don't execute in their best interest? And my thing constantly comes down to, we have to get honest and serious about how the plutocracy use race in these elections. And look, I'm offended that we have to talk about race, because I don't believe in race at all. As somebody who is as an engineer, as a science person, it is one of the most ridiculously stupid things that there is. Race is. But we're in a racialized society, and we have to go into that game. I think when we ask questions that, as far as what do people, how do we allow people to use an economic fallacy to justify a vote that has very little to do with the economy, even though that's the facade, but all otherwise having to do with gender and race. Hillary Clinton couldn't get over the notch, in as much as she won the popular vote, but not in the right places. Because she's a woman, Obama could make it because he's a man. And because things were bad enough that he could do it. Kamala had a double whammy. And until we get honest with it and say that most of the people, when their gut told them in that voting booth, I have got to change my vote from what I told the pollsters to her, it should tell us how effective the right wing, the plutocratic narrative is. And we as progressives, and specifically white progressives, have to talk to their white compatriots, in my opinion, and start letting folks know, hey, after all, race is a stupid thing. And having other people represent us as well as we have represented other people are just as valid. So without taking any more time, I just want to say I am not worried. I am not scared. I am not even concerned anymore. I did my crying because I felt that I know the gut feeling when you know that you are the most qualified and somebody that is not only not qualified, but somebody that would otherwise be considered a convict gets the nod. I know the hurt that comes with, because I've lived that personally. My question to everyone is, we can do, or what are we going to do about it? There's much we can do about it, but we have to ask the right questions and not believe the fallacies about the economy. Folks are spending more today and yesterday than they ever had. How is it the economy? And as soon as Trump got elected, they said, oh, the economy is good after all, to the pollsters. Thank you.
Great job, Eberto. Thank you for your thoughts, specifically on the election. And yeah, I think it is a profound and important statement to say that the billionaire class has won, at least in the moment. And I did drop a link to complement what you're doing. It's called the Three Cornerstones of American Fascism. And I think it'll really help folks to understand what it is that has developed here in this American context. With that said, our very dear friend Vicki Lowe from Washington State, who is an incredible leader, especially on the healthcare front, both for American Indian Health Services as well as the Universal Health Commission in Washington State. Vicki Lowe is going to bring in some wisdom from the indigenous tribal nations with which she's in contact. So, Vicki, thank you so much for being with us.
It's in I Squatchy, Manuai, Atston, Stanuna, Vicki Lowe, Sinsna, Statithlam, New Sklyam, Sinsna, Nixlock. My name is Vicki Lowe, Jamestown Slalom, and Bellacoola First Nations. It is good to see you here this morning. As Chuck shared, I am the Executive Director of the American Indian Health Commission, which means I work with the tribes in Washington State. I've been working in Indian healthcare delivery since 1996, and also chair of the Universal Healthcare Commission here in Washington State and the Washington State Women's Commission. I am also, because I was maybe bored, I don't know, I am also on Sequim City Council. We had a MAGA QAnon group try and take over our local government, so we came together in our community and took our government back from them. There's actually a book out about us. But I think, today I do want to talk about how important it is for us to take care of each other. And I'm so happy to see that already happening here. For Indigenous people, our Native American views of the LGBTQ community and people with disabilities is very different from dominant culture. We have always, accepted people as who they are. And I think that's important that we continue to do that. When I think of what we need to be doing, I think of how we responded during COVID. This is another form of an emergency where we really need to keep each other safe and take care of each other. But we also need to find some humor. I think humor is really important for us to get through things. Like, we had a Universal Healthcare Commission planning meeting on the day that we heard that Dr. Oz will probably be the head of HHS. So it's hard not to laugh at some of these things because they're so ridiculous, you can't believe they're true. As Native people, as Indigenous people, there's a long history of oppression from both religious groups and the government. But we have to keep in perspective the time of wounding and the times of healing. You know, Chuck talked about radical visioning. What we call generational clarity is understanding for our people. You know, the time of the hurt and the wounding has been the last couple hundred years, but there were thousands of years before that when our people were healthy. And when we think about that, you know, how they lived their lives and how they took care of each other and they were free from oppression, we have to bring that forward into today and then carry that forward to our next generations, which is something we call 7 generations visioning. Last week, we had a summit, and we didn't know what the results of that election were going to be before the summit, but it was a tribal and state leaders health summit. And we had a panel of elders, and I just want to close out with sharing what we heard from our elders. We asked them about the times when our culture was outlawed between 1883 and 1978, and how they kept their culture safe and how they moved it forward and how they kept talking. And one of the elders, an 85-year-old Suquamish woman, held up her fist and said, "We used quiet, militant resistance." So I just want to remind everybody that we got to stick together. We need to not escalate anger. We need to remind each other to care for each other. And even if people don't agree with us, we still have more in common with them than we don't. So we need to keep that in mind. Hot Nixon. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vicki, so much for your, as well as others, profound and wise words. Really beautiful. Thank you so much. At this point, I had indicated that we were going to do some conversation among the panelists. Maybe some. We're going to have to keep it a little bit brief because I do want to focus on getting the breakout room started at the top of the hour. But let's at least take a few minutes here for any response. Kind of, if you can keep it real brief, you know, to a minute or less. I'm addressing this now to the panelists. If there's anything that you want to add after now having heard your colleagues present their thoughts, anybody just throw up your hand and then go. Among our panelists, I'm not seeing hands.
Throw up my hands and I can go. I think from me to Nox, I think that it's very important, and I'm super grateful, first of all, that you're here, but that you share the perspective of someone who is just feeling it, going through it, and scared, because that is absolutely allowed. There's nothing shameful about that, and there's nothing to, like, no reason to feel like, why am I not doing more? I think also it's admirable that you have some acceptance of where you're at right now. This is where I'm at. I'm grieving. I'm scared. And you're not alone. I'm sure there's other folks in the room right now that feel that way. And certainly in the LGBTQ community, not alone. You're probably aware of that. A lot of folks are just despairing. I think if, at least from my perspective, my life perspective, you have some level of privilege, you know that it's a lot less likely for you to be subject to discrimination and violence. Might be easier to bounce back up and say, okay, well, let's just get straight to work. But if you know that your life and your well-being are first in line to be on the line, it's probably going to take you a little bit longer to jump up, and you may never. So do you and the rest of the LGBTQ plus community, including myself. That's okay. That's one of the responses to all of this that I talked about earlier today, that it's some folks are just going to be in that place. Yeah, what Bob and Terza said, not sharing your fears is courageous. It is courageous. And I have a lot of respect for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Let's bring, oops, see, I see Simon's hand is up. Simon, a minute or less. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask actually Daye something, because, you know, you mentioned how we need to get out of, we need to reach out beyond what you described as our bubble. And I know you presented it as a question, you didn't necessarily have a solution, but like so many of us are so overtaxed a lot of the time. We're trying to do so much, we're trying to put so much of ourselves into this work. It's like it can be exhausting to imagine like putting in that, putting in that extra effort to try to like break through these circles that we're sort of talking within. Do you have any idea about how we could do that without totally burning ourselves out, totally like running ourselves into the ground? Do you have any ideas about how that could be achieved, maybe?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. It is really challenging because we have to figure out how to do everything with a certain level of grace and boundaries, right, to keep ourselves going. But I think about a moment when, in trying to pass safe and equal schools bills that would protect LGBTQ folks across Pennsylvania from bullying and discrimination in schools, I was interviewed once by this local TV station, and when the story was posted online, haters came out in the comments in full force, and someone said to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that there are all these hateful people in the comments." And it was hard to read, but I was also like, this actually feels like the right place for us to do this interview to me, because if everyone had just been already on board, then that's maybe a medium where we already have those people. So I actually felt kind of, in a perverse way, encouraged by the fact that there was such a mix of responses to this story, because it meant it was reaching beyond people who are already completely on board with LGBT rights. So I think sometimes it is figuring out how to strategically, with, if we have the resilience and the strength to get outside of those safe spaces, because we have to reach people that might not actually enjoy the message at first. But if we're only talking in our channels where everybody's already kind of on board, then we're not reaching the people we need to be.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Daye and Simon, for the prompt. Absolutely. And since we have Daye and you and Vicki just finished, we just want to make an announcement here. We'll put the save the date in the chat for December 5th, right, Simon? This is Thursday, December 5th. It'll be the third installment of the One Pair of States radio show. We have a radio show, and we're asking Daye and Vicki to come back for this 2-hour program where we're going to go deeper into this conversation and really understand each other even more profoundly. So that's Eastern time. It's 6 to 8. And Pacific, that would be 3 to 5. We'll put more details into the chat. But that's December 5th, Thursday, where we're going to continue this conversation specifically with Daye and Vicki. So thank you for that. Anybody else on the panel? Just want to put a wrap up comment. Probably try to finish this in the next 2 to 3 minutes.
I can go.
Okay, go ahead, Nox.
I want to thank Alex for your thoughts and your support. And so I'm Chinese American. I'm trans, non-binary, and I am very privileged in that living in Philadelphia, I haven't had to deal with a lot of the transphobia and even the racism that a lot of other people had to deal with. There are microaggressions, but I don't have to fear for my physical safety. And I guess there's something to being confused for a man sometimes, some safety in that. But it's really difficult to conceptualize what's coming, really. And for me, like, I'm not so worried for myself because at worst, I might have to defend my life, and that's like physically, and that's a lot less scary than what a lot of other people are going to have to face. like I'm ready to fight if I had to, but fighting isn't going to solve a lot of problems. It's not the solution to most problems, actually. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, sorry. I lost it.
That's okay. We'll bring it back in the breakout rooms and subsequent conversation. So thank you for Knox for those comments. Absolutely. And everybody else who's weighed in. Mike, at this point, can let's break into or get into our breakout rooms. There are 8 of them. People will be randomly assigned to a room. And Mike, do you want to remind folks who's doing which room?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So I'll put in the chat the people who are assigned to each room, and then facilitators, please find those rooms, and but everybody else will be randomly assigned to them. So I will go ahead, look at this in the chat, and then we're all going to break up into about 8 rooms. So here we go.
And
You please make sure that the assignments of rooms is in the chat to everyone.
Okay, I'll put it in again. So far, I don't. People are starting to go into rooms now, but it's going to take probably a minute for people to get there.
Still not seeing the room assignments.
Okay.
Make sure it goes to everyone.
Yeah.
It went only to Alex.
I knew it.
Okay, Alex knows where to go. Okay.
Oops, I don't see the, oh, I'm muted.
No, you're not muted, but
I don't, in my ribbon at the bottom, this is Barbara Pearson. In my ribbon at the bottom, I don't see breakout rooms as an alternative. And nothing has come up on my screen to say, please join room 1 or 2 or 3.
All the rooms are open. So some of you may not have an icon that says breakout rooms.
Right.
We don't know. Correct.
Yeah, no breakout rooms.
can people manually fill the rooms, Mike? Can people just sort of quickly go in?
Well,
We can't get to where the.
Yeah, hold on just a second. If you click on more, you'll get a menu, and
and I have docs, notes, whiteboards reset to default.
Okay, there's a different more. There's one that should have record, polls, and quizzes, breakout rooms.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it
I
says
have record on my bottom.
But it's not a
captions, record, notes, whiteboard, or reset to default.
Okay. If your menu does not have breakout rooms on it, look for a different menu.
How do you do that?
You know which room I'm in that I'm supposed to facilitate?
Normally, we get pops up in the screen a white thing that says all the different breakout rooms, and we click on it.
This is turning into a bit of a logistical challenge. I think we may need to abort here and pull back into the plenary and just do the best we can to get people's contributions that way. I don't want to get stuck in a technological.
Good idea, Chuck. And we can keep
Purgatory.
working quietly behind the scenes and see if we can figure out something. But yeah, we should keep moving forward and just overcome the challenge.
Yeah. So if you can hear, I don't know if the folks who are already in the rooms, I see Vicki is in room 4. She got her way there. And then Alex is in room 6. And I don't know that anybody else has filled in those rooms so far. So if we can pull Vicki and Alex back out, let's just do a round robin here with the 40 people in the room and just do the very best we can. And we've got Eberto is only going to be able to stay with us for another 10, 15 minutes. So I certainly want to hear any more thoughts that you've got, Eberto. But let's see if we can get Vicki to come out to the main room, Mike.
Yeah, it takes a full minute for the breakout rooms to close, so she should be here shortly.
Okay, you're
She
closing
can,
rooms now?
she can,
Okay, good.
she can do leave breakout room.
Or she can leave, yeah.
Okay. So we were dealt lemons and we're going to make really excellent, excellent lemonade here in the moment.
Vicky's back.
Sounds better.
I see Vicki still in before. Let's see.
I'm back.
Okay, super. And is Alex back in the main room?
I am.
Alex, okay, awesome. Okay, so Mike, I'm going to remove spotlight from me and we're simply going to just open up the larger room here and just for time's sake, think about what you want to say. That the acronym we use in this world is WAIT. Why am I talking? Which is to say, be really precise and try to keep your comments actually to 30 seconds or less because of so many people. And just throw out ideas that you've got in terms of action steps, things that we can take that have been mentioned, you can double down on them, or you can bring a new idea into the mix. Just very quickly, keep your comments again to 30 seconds or less. What are you doing? And what are you planning to do? And do you have any new brainstorm ideas for the group? So let's just do the hand raising function. You click on React. It is on the bottom of most people's screens, and then just click on the raise hand icon. And let's just go around the room and do the very best we can. And we'll take this till about 1:20. We'll take it to 1:30 because we're all sharing. So we'll add a little bit more time. So Barbara and then Lynn. Barbara, real brief.
I just wanted to say that I was alerted to this by ACLU, but here we are in one-payer states, and the message I got from ACLU was there's still a lot to do in the states, and we can use the states. We can do what they call a firewall and try and stop the federal overreach into it, and we just have so many things that can be handled in the state that we need to focus on.
Super. Thank you, Barbara. And Barbara's from Western Mass. She runs our state page on One Pair States. Thank you, Barbara. Lynn?
Yes, I'm in our Revolution Bernie's group, and we're getting frequent emails every day to add our names to the various causes. Luckily, I live in California, and Gavin Newsom has already done a video of how he's going to block anything that Trump does. The last administration, he sued Trump 100 times, so he's set to fight, and I'll be fighting. I mean, if we need a big turnout, if we need a revolution, and us all the groups working together, then that's how I feel that we might be successful. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Appreciate that. Other folks, what's happening in your communities? What can you share with us? Inspire us with any feedback that you've got from today's presentation. Just kind of riff around the room. Pat Chadwick from Sacramento.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a way to advocate with, before Biden leaves, advocate for certain things to be put in place. And so some examples would be, well, and I don't know enough about the process of how you do this, but Harris had proposed covering long-term care under Medicare, which I don't, if that's something that we could ask Biden to do, or eliminate the federal death penalty. Some things he may not agree with, but at least I think there should be some kind of petition to ask him to do certain things before he leaves office. Things particularly that protect, vulnerable groups. And the other thing was just sort of an odd thing that somebody he appointed at the National Archives has been kind of whitewashing the archives, which I find pretty bad too. So, things like that, he might be able to do.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that, Pat. Appreciate it. Okay, now we've got a number of hands up. We've got Mike, Lloyd, Bob and Tirza, Bill, Davis, Mary McDevitt. So do the best you can to keep it to 30 seconds or less so we can just keep the thing churning. Mike Hirsch, thank you.
There are limited things that can be done on the federal level. Obviously, President Biden can issue executive orders, and it would make sense to put a lot of pressure on him to do everything that he can do. The problem with moving forward on the federal level, even during a lame duck session, is the Republicans control the House, and that's a problem. But just in way of encouragement, keep in contact with your members of Congress, even if they're not Democrats. They might be anti-MAGA, they might be reasonable people, certainly compared to the incoming influx. So I would keep pushing for that. Keep your eyes open, keep looking for things that can happen. And I'd like to brainstorm ideas for what we can push for.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And I just, along those lines, I just noticed that Lori Chavez de Raymer, a more moderate Republican, was just appointed or nominated for labor secretary. She's out of the Portland area, and she's number 2 on my target list for getting a Republican on with our state-based Universal Health Care Act. So I'm going to make tracks over to her office on Monday, Lori Chavez de Raymer, who's going to be moving into the Trump administration. We need friends everywhere. Lloyd.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for organizing this meeting, and thanks for all the speakers for their heartfelt words. I just want to say that it really bothers me that Americans have such a short memory and that they're very poorly educated in civics. Many countries, elections are mandatory, that one needs to participate. And just the fact that there was such poor voter turnout, I think, left me very, very unsettled. But thank you all, and we've got to keep fighting.
Okay. Yeah, 100%, from somebody who did the sort of remediation of civics education at the university level, since my students almost had it, none of them had it. I profoundly agree with you. That's a real hole in our education system, and it makes it easier for people to be confused. Bob and Tirza. Hey, Bob. Thanks, Lloyd.
Hey, Chuck. Well, we are inspired and have been well informed by the panel. And I just wanted to lift up as one example the Palestinian solidarity work that we have been privileged to participate in with a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-faith, multi-ethnic group here in the Boston area. And it continues. And one of the inspiring phrases from the Palestinian Solidarity Movement is, existence is resistance. So we continue to exist. We continue to lift up our Palestinian partners. So thank you.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thanks. Bob, Tirza, do you want to add something?
Yeah, couple of things. The poor voter turnout thing, it occurs to me that part of the reason for that is that many voters are no longer invested in the system as it is. They don't want anything to do with it. And so we need to get to these people to articulate what kind of a system they can invest in. That's really where the revolution is. And they're already there in that they've rejected what is. So now we have to get them to help us understand what they want it to be. The other thing is that it seems like we always say that people vote against their own interests, but I'm not sure that that's correct. I think that what's happening is that we think that they're voting against what we think their best interests are. And I think we have to talk to people one-to-one to find out what their interests really are. Because I think that we've been saying that for years, and that's never changed anything. So I think we really need to ask ourselves if we're really right about that.
Yeah, and meet people where they are, right? Thank you so much, Tirza and Bob. Bill Davis, brother from Ohio. Bill.
Yeah, hi, Chuck. Um, in Ohio, we suffered a devastating blow in failing to get the issue 1 passed to stop gerrymandering. The opposition ran an awful campaign of lies and misinformation. And so we've been regrouping to figure out what to do about that. But as far as what people can do, if they're not already hooked into some of the big organizations, there are so many of them, and I don't know, how people might want to pick and choose. But Common Cause has a website for national issues as well as issues in every state. And you can go there to find priorities or take action. The ACLU is the same way, aclu.org. Indivisible, we have groups locally for indivisible actions. And somebody already mentioned Our Revolution. Mobilize is another place to find actions that are going on, meetings and events in your area. It's a little hard, but if you poke at it a while, you'll figure out how to find the stuff that's most relevant to you.
Great. Yeah, and Bill, and for others, feel free at this point to drop links into the chat for any of your suggestions, and then we'll be sure we save the chat.
Okay.
And then keep sharing the resources. I want to honor, if I can, just jump the queue over to Eberto Willies. I know you have to cut and run, brother. I'm going to ask to bring up Eberto, and then we'll come back to Mary, Michele, Alex, and Sherry. Eberto?
Thank you very much, Chuck. I want to mention that Dr. Reverend Barber did ask the question about whether people are voting their own interests, and in fact, he did agree with the past person who said they are in fact voting their interests. But there's a corollary to that, and that is that we have asked people what their interests are, and that have been answered many times over. So I repeat some of the things that I said before, and that is, why is it that they aren't voting for those who purport to provide the things that they say that they want? And I further stated in my introduction that gives the question that we have to ask: why is it that they wouldn't do that? And my contention is that we're not asking the right questions and going to the right folks to get that answered. And I'll be honest with everybody here. It perplexed me that after making a statement of that sort, that there was actually no response to it at all. I waited for several people to speak, and there was actually no response to it. So henceforth, in my great opinion, it's an issue with the progressive movement itself that many a times don't go to the core issues of why we lose. Thanks.
Thank you, Eberto. And if you need to cut out, we understand, but thank you so much for being here with us today. And folks, do check out his daily program, Politics Done Right. It's really an excellent opportunity to participate. Somebody needs to self-mute, or Mary, was that you? Mary, you're up. Mary McDevitt, thanks again.
Yes, thank you. I'm a retired physician here in Sonoma, California. And after Matt Gaetz, my most concern was the 2 nominees for the federal healthcare system. So I had sent an email to the American Medical Association asking them to come out with a protest. And I've contacted all my doctor friends, and all my other friends, I've asked them to contact their doctors and ask them to protest to their local medical societies.
Are we talking about Dr. Oz and RFK Jr.?
Yes, that's correct.
Center for Medicare, Medicaid Services is where Oz is. And he's already come out and said he's already all the way in with Medicare Advantage, just privatizing and destroying Medicare, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you
So
for
I'm
that.
hoping that the doctors will organize and come out with a formal protest from the AMA.
Yeah, yeah. Any links you want to drop in the chat again? Anybody, please do. And also our friends at PNHP, for folks who are not oriented there, that's another a good place to push up. But absolutely, the AMA is important. So thanks so much, Mary, for being with us. Michele Hamilton from Central PA. Michele.
Hey, I'll be quick. So, two things. One is freedom schools. The reality is schools are never have, and definitely aren't going to now, teach our young people and us the reality of the history of this country and ways to navigate and to be politically expedient. So I feel at some point we're going to have to do that ourselves, and educate ourselves while we can, and also support our libraries and other places where we can get information. The other is not political at all. I think we just need to be ready. I'm going to be honest, I am paying down debts that I was sort of dragging on because I don't know financially what's going to come down and if things that could support and help me won't be there. And so I do say for all of you, health wise, financial wise, handle business. If you need to rest, rest. If you haven't had a doctor's appointment in a while, do it now. Well, there's some kind of insurance and access to things because we don't know what's happening. Um, we just got to be ready for whatever happens. And that might mean taking, as much as we want to be big box revolutionary, if we're unhealthy and we're not in a position where we can even be taking care of ourselves, we're not really going to be able to lead a revolution. So please take care of yourself as best you can and do the things you can do in this current time for the future. I also 100% agree with Tirza, and I will also sort of disagree with Eberto in that I don't think we always lose and stuff. I think we had a big loss, but I don't think we need to totally rethink everything we've ever done and stuff. I think a lot of what we learned is that conservatives will have realized that they can outvote progressives if they come in force. In Pennsylvania, we had the Amish coming out to vote, and they never come out to vote. So, anyway, I'm done.
Thank you, Michele. And after we're done with this round robin, I encourage folks to hang on because we're going to be doing some radical visioning work, and I believe you'll really enjoy it and get a lot out of it if you've not done this before. So that's what we're going to be doing after we're done here. So next up, we got Alex, then Sherry, Vicki, Sharon, and Bill. Alex?
Yep, I'm gonna ride on the education point. In full agreement with everything Michele said. I'm just gonna add a little bit more on a tangent. We also need to be defending and supporting our public schools as institutions. Simple fact is parents are more strapped for time and resources than they ever have been, whether it should or shouldn't be the case. Schools are often also part of childcare. They are overly taxed as it is. Classes are way too big. Teachers are stressed out, underpaid, overworked. And with the radical right coming in to destroy school boards, destroy curriculum, and quite frankly, make that kind of civic education that needs to be in school less and less accessible to the point where it could be a pipe dream to ever see that show up in schools. We've got to be there to fight back against any kind of that kind of crap going on in school boards and in schools. If you're not a parent, get to know parents in your neighborhood. Become a safe adult to the kids in your neighborhood. If you are a parent or a grandparent, consider using those connections to support the schools that your kids are in. Private schools too, with the particular emphasis on public schools because of what they are dependent on, but private schools aren't safe either. Every house of education that's going to affect a child growing up in this era needs to be supported and defended. So whether that looks like running for school board or not, reflect on that. Think about what you can do. I know I am. I'm not a parent, I'm a cat parent, but I'm looking at my school district now and trying to think of ways that I can be supportive in the moment.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for that. Yeah. Let's see, Sherry, Vicki, Sharon, Sherry Morgan, our dear friend from Ruby Red, South Central PA.
Yeah,
Sherry?
that's exactly right. I'm Sherry Morgan. My comment is I am actually from a rural area where my congressman chartered 2 buses and took them to January 6th. So trying to talk to my congressman is not going to be helpful. So one of the things that we're doing with our local county Democratic committee is we have decided that we want to build up our vulnerable communities and bring them together. Right now, even though there are lots of different organizations you can join, we don't have one singular organization that can bring all of those folks together because, they're going to be stronger if there are more numbers. So one of the ways that we're planning on growing the cohesiveness of all these vulnerable groups is to invite people into our county headquarters to help people obtain services, social services, that even those that may be eliminated in the future of 2025, but we want to connect people to social services that they need so that they understand that their government can help them and so that they have their needs met. And that it's also harder for our elected officials to throw out services once people have started to see how beneficial they are. So that was one of the things that we're trying to do, is trying to connect our more vulnerable citizens to services that they need, build their community so they have a stronger voice. I mean, I'm a long time disabilities rights advocate, but where I am, we don't have a whole lot of people with disabilities that come together. You're lucky if you can get 10 people with disabilities to go bowling, so and I don't even do that because it's not my kind of thing, but it's building our communities is what we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sherry, and for your leadership also over at the Progressive Caucus, which interfaces with the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. Let's see. Next up is Vicki. Welcome back, Vicki.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to speak to the education issue because our history has never been taught in schools, even in Washington State. The true history, the Indian Wars, the genocide, and the boarding schools, and all that information starting to come out. And so we're working on TikToks to help educate youth. I don't know if TikTok's going to stay around or not, but whatever it is that youth are using, I think our idea is we're starting with food sovereignty and teaching about how to forage for foods and, intermix that with what you can find in the grocery store, because we know people are really hitting the budget, but also starting to intersperse our history in that so we can make sure that people really know the true history. We had a lot of Indigenous people vote for Trump, which it just is mind-boggling to me, that not only is he just a complete racist, he really is against tribal casinos, which is the way that a lot of tribes fund their governmental services. So in my canvassing here in Sequim, they tried to tell me only knock on doors of Democrats. And I'm like, no, I've lived here all my life. I'm going to knock on doors of everybody. But listening to people, and when people tell me things that are rhetoric, I ask them to tell me more about it. And like one lady was, and I know I'm talking a lot, one lady was talking about what they're teaching kids in school. And I'm like, oh my God, what are they teaching kids in school? I have grandkids in school. And she wouldn't say what it was. I know what, she thought that they're teaching them to be transgender and, making the kids gay and stuff. And so if you let people talk, sometimes they can talk their way out of their own thinking. I mean, that doesn't work with everybody, but I think people need to be heard. And even if we don't agree with them, to ask them questions instead of argue with them. And sometimes they can come to their own conclusion about things. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah, really good point. I mean, let's face it, we all need validation and just listening. Maybe they've never had anybody listen to them before, quite conceivably. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you. I was buoyed by this
and sorry, I'm kind of hoarse, but I was buoyed by the Zoom with Public Citizen and also the ACL Zoom that was just mentioned. But Public Citizen is organizing with many other progressive organizations. And I think this will help us be stronger so that we're acting more collectively. And I think One Payer States is a compatriot of One Payer, I mean, a Public Citizen. And could I get Mary's email? I'd like to follow up with PNHP here in Minnesota to do what she suggested.
Yeah, feel free to drop emails. I think we're in a safe space. You can do so. You can do so directly by just contacting the person. Click on their chat function on their picture, on your picture. So you can communicate that way, or just generally just do the larger serve on the thing. Okay, thanks for that, Sharon. Let's see. Anybody else? I have something I want to drop in the chat here. I dropped a couple things.